blow this up.
Look alive, Bomb Squad. We are back. It is the official kickoff episode of season 3 of Let's Blow This Up. I'm your host, Jason Cercone, and we were starting in style with the very first installment in our co-host collective series. I am joined by my good friends Marc Ronick and Simona Costantini. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Jason.
Hello. I didn't know that we were the kickoff. This was about to set the whole vibe.
That's right. We are setting the bar high. I hope you are ready. I told you this was going to be a good way to lead off. Lead with strength, as they say.
Mm-hmm. No pressure, Mark.
No, none.
And remember, I have editing powers, so one way or another, you're all going to sound real good when this is all over.
I think this is a topic that Simona and I love talking about, so I'm not too worried about it.
100%. That's why when we were putting this series together, I knew you both would be great choices to join me for this topic. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of podcasters, they might think they have it, but we've all seen evidence that sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle throughout the process, or even in the very beginning, it's not being addressed soon enough. Mm-hmm. So many podcasters think getting the right equipment is the most important thing, having the right studio space, having a good backdrop. These are all factors that come into play, but none of it matters unless you have the right mindset. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to pick apart today, because I really feel like this needs to be the first thing that gets addressed. And I know when I'm talking to new clients, if they've never podcasted before, that's where we go first. We have to make sure that they're doing this for the right reasons and they're establishing a good why, so they stay invested in the overall production. So turning the mic over to you guys, what has been your thought process on mindset when it comes to podcasting since your careers have begun in this space?
Wow. Do you want to go first, Simona? Ladies first?
No, I was going to say you go ahead. You go ahead. I have a thought, but you go ahead.
Well, you know what? For me, mindset's been big in the past 5-6 years. It's been not just in podcasting, in life in general. Mm-hmm. And the thing that really drives me crazy over these past few years, where I am helping a lot of podcasters, is that it's a hard sell to convince them of what you just said, Jason, that that mindset is so important. And if you have that, we'll call it right mindset, that's where the success begins. That's where all the other things will fall into place. And why I get frustrated with it is because I'll try to make content about it. I'll try to talk about it on my podcast, and I don't feel like it gets the same engagement as what's the latest tip and trick to get here quicker, right? So that really frustrates me, and that's why I'm super excited to do this today with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I have to echo all of this so much, and it's taking me back to this conversation that I just had recently with my team, and we were, helping a client with some production work and all of the stuff. And the biggest question that kind of kept coming back is, it doesn't really matter what kind of tech you have if you don't have the ability to step over the fear of being seen, or the fear of promoting your work, or the fear of actually sharing about your conversations. If you don't want to do any of that, then if you can't get past that fear, and if you can't get past the mindset piece of it, it doesn't really matter what kind of tech you have, because at the end of the day, it's not really going to make your content better.
I also think if you have a strong mindset, you're not as worried about the best equipment anymore, right? Yes. You have the confidence, you have that direction, and okay, if I don't have the best, I'm going to make it work with what I got, right? You're focused on something else, not what's going to make me better, what outside sources are going to make me a better podcaster.
Mm-hmm. So can I add into this? When I first started my very first podcast, which is called Happiness Happens, that was at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And when I started that show, I mean, I know times are very different now, and there's quote unquote certain things, if you will, that people attempt or try and want to make sure that they have or do in their podcasting process. But back then, it was very, very clear to me that the only important thing was to deliver the message in the exact way that I knew I could deliver it to the exact people that needed to hear it. Yeah. And that came from belief in myself, from confidence in my voice, right? And so if you don't have those things, it's very challenging to step up to the mic and continue to produce episodes over and over and over again, which is why, and Mark, you may have heard me say this before probably, but in our process of working with clients, we always start with this piece first, which is the why, Jason, that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What is your podcast about? Who is it for? And why should they care? Those are literally the 3 questions that I make every single client answer right off the bat and turn that into their mission statement. And the reason why is because then you take that mission statement and you go back to it over and over and over again every single time you don't feel good enough or every single time you don't feel like showing up. So if you don't have an anchor to anchor you back and bring you back into the mindset that you need and you want to have to really get your content in front of the right people, it's not going to matter what you share because it's not going to feel in alignment. It may not land the way that you want it to because you're not aligned within you. And I know we kind of all vibe on the same frequency with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that becomes your North Star. And it's
100%.
there are going to be times, we've all been doing this long enough to know there are going to be times where we struggle, where we feel like we're not doing good enough. Maybe our content isn't hitting the way we want it to. Like you said, Mark, you've got certain things you want to say, but other pieces of content do better. But if we keep our why in mind and we have it to refer back to, it's going to remind us why we're doing this. Why are we moving forward? And this is one of the geeky things that I always take from podcasting, but there's so many parallels to real life. A lesson like that transcends podcasting. It's something that we can apply to so many areas of our life. If we have a positive, strong why that's going to drive us forward, it will help us get through those bad times. It will make the victories even sweeter.
Well said.
Dropping the mic.
Yeah.
Literally, now we're all like, well, that was a great
Well, that was, I said we were going to stay under half an hour with this.
Minute 7. Like,
well, let's talk about where this all stems from, because I know how the 3 of us think, but I know when I follow the forums, I'm in the conversations online, just talking with various people in a number of different settings. But oftentimes I'll see somebody say, thinking about starting a podcast, what's the equipment what equipment should I get? Where should I do
Blue
it?
Yeti. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, no.
I'm joking.
Episode for another day. But I think that we are constantly fed these amazing final products that people have put years behind. That's what we see. That's typically what inspires us to say, you know what? I want to do that. But they're on year 10 and we're at phase 1. So I think a lot of podcasters might take that mentality and say, ooh, I'm going to do this. And what's my fastest way to get there? Mark, you said it perfectly. I want to talk about these things because they're incredibly important, but it's the latest tech that gets the more attention. So what are your guys' thoughts on this about what can we do to shift the mentality and make people start thinking about establishing that why, having that North Star first, and make that the positive conversation and the more mainstream conversation that needs to be had in our podcast industry?
Can I answer this with a question that might give us an even different?
My mother said never to do that, but I'll allow it.
Really?
Don't answer a question with a question. It's actually a Sopranos line. I don't think my mom's ever said that. Please continue.
You know what? This Italian over here didn't get the reference. So sorry.
That's a vague one. If you would have got that one, I would have been incredibly proud of you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question though is, do you think that people are jaded with the word or by the word mindset?
Yes,
I think so.
I do. I think I was, even when Jason said it, when he first said, we're going to talk about mindset, to me, my stomach kind of dropped because I was afraid that people would be tuning out. Not your fault, but it's the people's fault.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right? I get concerned about that. Yeah. Did Simona, did you want to answer your own question?
The only thought that is coming to my mind right now, based off of what you said, is Taylor Swift's line, "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." Because it's so true. When you think about the things behind what mindset even means or is, or how people interact with that word, I feel like it can feel like sometimes it can feel like an elusive thing that everyone talks about that isn't actually tangible for people. And it can be hard to try and explain when you're in a type of mindset that isn't looking to shift. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking to
Right.
stay in the same mindset that you're currently in right now, and you're like, I already know everything that I need to know about mindset. I mean, please listen to this episode and continue to listen to it, because anytime you feel like you know everything about everything or anything is the moment where you actually probably should dive in and try and see if you can learn a different perspective. Right.
Sure.
And so there's that piece to it around mindset where I'm like, some people just don't resonate with the word. It's kind of like the word authentic,
Yeah.
authenticity. It's like we've driven these words that were previously new and now they're totally different. And there's not really what's the word I'm looking for? Like there's not really like an anchoring back to it.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, people it becomes overused, and then people just hear it and they're like, yeah. Okay. Authenticity, mindset. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. But
Yeah.
you're
let
right.
go.
I feel like people aren't really connecting. I get annoyed when people will say, I'm going to say authentic. I know I hate using that word. Right. And it drives me crazy because you know what? It is the word, and it's the most appropriate word you're trying to use right now. So embrace it and just move forward and forget it, because that is, and talk about mindset. To me, that is a fear of judgment. When somebody says mindset, everybody says that. I hate that word. That's a fear of judgment because they're afraid that the person listening on the other side is going to roll their eyes and say, oh, not again. Here we go. Right. But I believe if you actually say it and own that word and continue on and don't even give it any of that nonsense, I think it's going to land differently with the other person listening.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, because you never know who's listening. And even if some people listen to what you have to say, if you're brave enough to put that content out there, some people might not like it. Actually, I know for a fact many people might not like it, but there's going to be the ones that do, that are going to become your loyal followers, and they're going to tell others just like them they should be listening and watching you as well. That's how you grow an audience, because you're appealing to the right people. You're pushing the wrong ones away, and maybe someday, if you keep yelling loud enough, maybe the person that didn't understand or didn't want to align with what you had to say before starts to come around. Okay, that jives a little bit. Maybe I'll listen to some more and see if it actually resonates with me. But it does start with having the braveness, like you said, Mark, to put yourself out there, not be worried about what other people are going to say. If you want to say the word authentic, you say it. You want to say the word mindset because it's incredibly important? Say it because you absolutely believe it. And that's what I'm trying to build this show and this season to be about, is I don't give a shit what other people say. And that's, for me, it's people that want to use podcasting to grow their brand, to build visibility, to get their message out there. They're going to listen to our conversations and understand this is where it starts. And mindset, that's why we're kicking off the season with mindset, because it's all about establishing that first, because that's your foundation.
Yeah. And
You
that
can
whole
build so much
thing,
upon that.
something you said there, don't be afraid to say it. And it's like, that is a part of the mindset. It is overcoming any fear of judgment, because not everyone will like your show. That's okay.
Yep,
Focus on serving that target audience, that ideal audience, rather than just trying to please everyone. And I fully admit I deal with that probably daily when I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, because I do a daily podcast, and there are times that I'll stumble because I catch myself. I'm filtering what I want to say because I want it to I'm trying to make it land in a way that everybody is going to appreciate it. Instead of just saying it as the way I appreciate it, I'm trying to filter it for them, and it never works as well as if I'm just saying what I want to say with confidence, right?
There's three things that I'm like on the tip of my tongue. So the first thing, Mark, to that point specifically, something that I say to my clients all the time: say what you need to say and only the way that you can deliver it. You know what I mean? We can't make everybody happy. And this goes into my second point of, I was having this conversation with a client the other day, and she's so funny. She always sends me like screenshots of the comments she receives on YouTube, and she has a pretty big YouTube following. And she's always like, she'll send them to me, like these, like, they're really not nice comments. And she'll send them to me. And then we kind of just sit there and we like laugh about them a little bit, like not in a mean way or anything. And every single time we're done that conversation, we always are both like, thank you so much for the comment, because you just literally added money into my bank account and views into my videos, and you just pushed me up into the algorithm even more with your comments. So, maybe a little bit of, looking at it in that way is also good too. And then a question for both of you, maybe I should have asked this earlier, but when we talk about the word mindset, what is the reframe that you are hoping our listener today is going to gain when they think about that word?
Well, I'm going to start. Well, I'm sorry, Mark. I want to say to speak to what you're saying about the comments. I have said this many times on this show. I owe my life in podcasting to a troll that started trolling me on Twitter and who was a podcaster. And in my mind, I'm going to do it better than that guy. I didn't right away. Maybe I am now. I can't speak to that. But nevertheless, that dude pulled me in, and here we are today. But for me to answer your question, Simona, I think with mindset, my mission with this episode and really everything I do is to make people think about that first. Okay, I want to start a podcast. What does that mean? What does that mean to me? And that's why I love what you do, Simona. You were saying you start off with those 3 questions. I do something very similar with my clients because we're leading off with the right thing. I call it the foundation. You're answering these questions because this is ultimately going to dictate how we work together, because you may put in there, I want to be the next Joe Rogan. And that's something we're going to need to address because he's taken. Be the first you with your podcast. So there are a number of things that we need to get out in the open so we can discuss them freely and ultimately figure out what's the best way to proceed for you. So not only are we putting a game plan together, but we're getting your mindset pointed in the right way so I can address, listen, been doing this for a decade. This is what it means to have the right mindset and the right approach to this. So for me, I would hope that someone that listens to this starts there. If you're doing a podcast already, think back to when you started and did you put that level of thought into it? I know when I started podcasting, I certainly did not. Ultimately, why the first show I did failed, because I just didn't think about the big picture and where I wanted it to go. So if you're thinking long-term and all of the amazing benefits that come from having a podcast for your brand, you got to start there. That's what I'm hoping we can shift the thoughts and the minds of people as they consume this today. Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
So I think I'd like to actually take it in a little bit of a deeper direction, in the sense that I believe that there are different types of mindsets that a podcaster wants to use when they're approaching podcasting. I think there's a growth mindset, and there's some things about that I'm happy to talk about. There's a discipline mindset, and there's the value-driven mindset, and that's really more focused to me on the audience. But when I'm talking about, since I brought up fear of judgment earlier, I think that's part of the growth mindset. It's overcoming that fear of judgment. I also think that there's an area that I often see struggling with, which is perfection, right? So I encourage my clients all the time to embrace imperfection, because I see so many podcasters getting stuck in that analysis paralysis, waiting for that perfect episode. I know somebody right now who I'm not going to call out, but I know somebody right now who does what the 3 of us do, helps other podcasters. And this person is struggling to press record on that first episode, or maybe that person has hit record and constantly going back and hitting the record button because they never seem to be happy with it. And to me, it's a done is better than perfect mentality.
Oh my gosh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
You're making me think back the other day. I went back to my Happiness Happens show, which I have 2 podcasts now, and Happiness Happens is the first one I started with. But I went back to episode 1, and I've never done that. I've never listened back to my content ever, other than from when I edited it. But I'm not the person who will listen to my own episodes on, Apple and Spotify to try and perfect and get better and this and that, because in the nicest possible way, I don't really care enough. You know what I mean? Like, I'm confident in the message that I'm going to share, and I know it's going to be good. And I know me, I'm not going to put anything on the air that's whatever. Anyways, so that's that. But I was going back to Happiness Happens, and I listened to the first episode versus where I was at, now. And it was so funny, you guys. I actually encourage, if you haven't done this in a while, go back to the very first of anything you've ever done. It was like, I have to imitate it. It was like, welcome to Happiness Happens. I am so happy. And now it's like, hey, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah.
It was so funny. Oh my God.
So you
And
got the
that's,
Valley Girl out of you.
Oh my God. I sounded like a small child. Like I was like, welcome to Happiness Happen. Like I please go listen to it.
and I haven't heard that one. And to me, that goes back to the word authenticity, right? Because I
Right.
think when we're doing that first episode, we feel like we have to put on an act, right? We have to speak a certain
Mhm.
way, do it a certain way. And really the way that it connects most with the audience is what we're doing right now. We're just talking, we're just having a conversation, and we're laughing when we're appropriately where we're supposed to laugh. We're not forcing things, right?
Yep.
I think that's a big one for people.
That's typically an initial conversation I have too with when it comes to the mindset part, where when we move into strategy, especially, I mean, I always reiterate this when we get to the studio or we get to recording day. You're not doing anything different than what you do every day. You're having conversations. You talk with your team, you talk with your clients, you talk with your family. It's laid back. Do you feel pressure when you do that? Well, of course I don't. Yeah, exactly. That's what this is. We're just replicating that environment and putting a microphone and a camera in front of you. This way you can capture all of that magic and put it out for the world to consume. That's the idea. That's the mindset you should have. Now, yes, the world's not showing up on day one, but ideally you're creating something that hopefully the world is coming to show up for. And that's typically your world, your people, your tribe. But if you do come into it with this mindset of, I've got to put on a performance and I've got to bring my A game and I've got to be at the top of it, it's going to get in your head and you're going to start talking like Simona did when that's not you. And I've never known Simona as that Simona. I've only known you as this Simona. So
I might have been exaggerating it. I don't know.
I need to go back and listen to this first episode.
Do you want to play a clip too? No, I'm just kidding.
Even if you were exaggerating it though, Simona, you were hearing what I was just describing. You were hearing that you weren't entirely authentic because you were probably nervous because it was something new to you, and you were probably trying to force something, which we all did. I mean, at least I know all three of us did here. Yeah.
100%. Well, you got to start somewhere, right? And this is the thing. Like, when I go back to when we work with anybody, like that why piece, you know, the mission statement like piece and all of that, it can be that you want to have 1 million downloads on your podcast in the first year. If that is your why, I mean, like that's your outcome, I guess. What is the bigger why under that? There's always something that's layered underneath that, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And also, what's really great about that is that you have a goal that you're reaching. You're trying to, you know, get to somewhere. But you also have to leave space for fluidity. You have to leave space for magic to happen. You have to leave space for organic conversations to happen, which is why I'm not a fan of scripts. I've tried it and it's so awkward. Like, and I also don't have a teleprompter. So sometimes when if I do something with this scripted, I'm like, this is a really great episode. Okay, this is like so bad, but this is a really great episode. And then I'm like looking down, read. And then I'm like, okay, now this is. And it's like fine in editing afterwards. It looks fine, but the energy isn't there. So if you're constantly trying to like censor your own self and not let your whole personality shine, I feel like you're doing a disservice to other people by not tapping into who you truly are, because then other people don't get to see that, you know?
Yeah. And I think everybody finds their own way of doing it along the way. For me, it took doing live streaming to make me realize I excel in that environment and I don't try to check myself and stop myself. When I know that I'm pre-recording something, I'll stop myself mentally and say, oh, you could have said that better. And then that throws me off and then I've got to go back and re-record. If I'm live, I just go. So now I've trained my brain to say no matter what the environment is, if you're in front of the camera, pretend it's live. If it is live, then yes. But if it's not, just act as if, because in my mind, I'm telling myself I'm relaying a better message and it's coming across much stronger because I'm just letting myself go and I'm not putting any pressure on myself to perform and say something perfectly. I just go and let things happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. I used to be excessive about editing, especially myself, and I would spend hours doing it, and I think I did a damn good job. Like, I don't think people know what I was actually editing. They just thought, wow, this guy sounds great all the time. And I'll tell you what you said, Jason, really stuck with me, the whole idea of doing it live. If you want to get over that hump of all over editing yourself, Do it
Do it
live. And
yes.
look, I'm kind of saying this tongue in cheek because I know not everybody has the ability to do this, but try doing it every day. Do it 5 days a week. You will stop editing. It's just too much, right?
Or you'll
And
hire
then
an editor.
Yeah, right. But really, I've hired an editor since then, since I realized how much work 5 days a week is. And one of the instructions to her, occasionally I'll tell her, look, I want you to spend a little more time because of X, Y, and Z. But overall, I ask her to keep it short, spend maybe an hour at the most editing it, right? Because it's just a waste of time. And it's taught me to embrace my authenticity, embrace my faults, and not worry so much about them anymore. And it's actually very liberating as well.
It is.
Oh, it really is.
I love that.
And I think when you're first getting started, that may seem like it's very far off in the distance. And
it does.
And
it does.
Again, I go back to what I said before. When I'm working with somebody that's never done this before, I try to get them in that mindset of conversation first. That's what's happening right now. Whether you're sitting with somebody and it's a guest, or you're just talking to the camera in a solo format, you're just having a conversation. Pretend the camera is your best friend and you're out for a cup of coffee, or you're having a cocktail somewhere. That instantly brings the pressure down because they're not treating it as a performance. The mindset is not, I have to go in front of the world and do this thing. I love this environment with the three of us, and I say this all the time. This is just a conversation amongst friends right now. When it goes live, people show up to listen to it and they can learn from what we've had to say. But in the moment, I just get to rap with two of my good friends.
Exactly.
That to me, that's one of the biggest parts of why I love podcasting, because I get to make these types of connections and have these talks. And ultimately, I feel better. I learn more. I can learn from your insight, and hopefully vice versa.
Exactly. Could you imagine we were sitting here today and we were like, so Jason, what is your favorite part about the mindset of podcasting? That's a really good point, Mark.
And then
like,
Jason,
it's just like, what?
And then Jason turns to his script that he's relying on heavily and reading it verbatim, word for word, right? Like that's just not authentic. That's not what podcasting is to me.
No.
And also, we have to highlight too, though, that we have been doing this for years. And so not everyone is as comfortable as being on camera. And so I know we're just, the three of us, we're just joking around. And there's also obviously the very real fear about being seen, about getting outside of that box, about talking about something new that people might not know that you even talk about. So if you're that person right now listening to this, just know that it's okay and it's safe for you to try something new. It's okay to go off script a little bit. It's okay to have fun and bring joy into what you do, because man, we are not here for a long time, and we better figure out how to have some joy along the way, because then why do it? Why do it?
Amen to that.
Agreed.
And I'll say, I think what you just said, Simona, speaks perfectly to 2 points. One, look how far we've all come. And I think we've all carried ourselves very well in this conversation today. So we're living examples of what can happen if you continue to put attention on your craft and continue to get better at what you're doing. Number two, working with any of the three of us as a new podcaster, or even as an experienced podcaster who wants to hone their game a little bit, talk to any one of us and we can help you do it in a much more clear, much more positive, and a much more, I would say, a much more experienced way, because you have experience. Now there might be some tweaks that we could help you make, but ultimately connecting with any of the three of us is going to help your podcast game.
Exactly. I love that so much. And also, I'm just going to throw in, like, we're the three best friends that anyone can get.
I don't think this episode would have been as anything without that addition to it. So thank you, Simona.
Really
maybe you should start the whole thing off with that,
Well, I may have to do a little sound clip. So if you're hearing this twice, Bomb Squad, that's why. But I think that is a fantastic place to wrap this episode up. So the Collective series is off and running. And I want to thank Mark. I want to thank Simona. You've both been great. I know we'll probably hear your voices on a couple future episodes here on the Co-Host Collective throughout this season of Let's Blow This Up. Any parting words before we sign off for today?
I'll part with this one, and I've shared this with you, Jason, before, probably on one of my shows, but it's something that a common friend of ours taught me, and it's about focusing on your audience and not worrying so much about how many people are there, but focus only on the people that are there. Right. And the analogy is, if you're hosting a party and you've got 20 people there, and you're too busy worried looking out the door for the next set of guests to come, your guests aren't having a good time and they're kind of annoyed that you're not there for them.
Yeah.
So my advice is just pay attention to the people at the party and focus on serving them. And then more people will start coming to your next parties. So just focus on the people that actually are there and care.
Exactly.
Beautifully
exactly. And Mark has a really fun party every single morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time, podcasting morning chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're
My parting words are, you are the heartbeat behind what you do and the message that you share. Step out of fear, step out of the overthinking, interrupt the pattern that's keeping you small and holding you back, and step into the creativity and step into the voice that you are meant to share every single day.
Whew, I don't even know if I can top that.
You can't.
You probably
I don't
can't.
think
No, I'm
I
just
can. I will say to try, but I will probably fall short. But to just put a bow on everything we've talked about today, put mindset first. Think about the foundation before you start to build the skyscraper, because things are going to fall if you're not putting the right ideas in place first. So mindset comes first. If you need that reiterated, just hit the back button and listen to this episode all over again. And with that, we are going to sign off on this episode of Let's Blow This Up with Marc Ronick of iRonick Media and Simona Costantini of Bolt Productions. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Jason.
Until next time, Bomb Squad, stay explosive.